Senate will come back to order. I recognize the senator from the 54th.
Yes, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adhere to its amendment to HB 142 and that a conference committee be appointed.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 142 by Representative Manor of the 56 and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to campus policemen so as to provide for the establishment of unified campus police forces through agreements entered into by colleges and universities. Committee of the Senate on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass, respectfully submitted by Senator Albers, the 56th District Chairman. The Senate offers the following amendment. Amendment 1 to amend House Bill 142 by striking 500 on line 16 and replacing with 200, by striking 1/4 on line 17 and replacing with 1/10. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator from the 54th has moved that the Senate insist on its version of House Bill 142 and that a conference committee be appointed. We will agree. Is there objection to that? Without objection, we will appoint the conferees, senator from the 54th, senator from the 56th, and senator from the 37th will be the conferees on that. I recognize the senator from the 27th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate insist on its amendment to House Bill 52.
Secretary, read the caption.
HB 52 by Representative Thomas of the 21st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to highways, bridges, and ferries so as to amend notice provisions relative to meetings for the election of board members, to provide for negotiations and a request for proposals relative to public-private partnerships P3s. Senator Tillery of the 19th and others offer the following amendment to amend House Bill 52 by amending line 62 to read as follows: authorized to waive this requirement by majority vote if 1. A separate state appropriation is made by name specifically for such project, or 2. 50% of such project is funded by the Georgia Ports Authority. No?
Recognize the senator from the 27th. Waves. He has moved that the Senate insists on its amendment to House Bill 52. Is there objection? Without objection, it is insisted. It is insisted upon. Recognize the senator from the 3rd for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 246. The Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 246 by Senator Hodges of the 3rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 10 of Title 49 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to the Georgia Board of Healthcare Workforce so as to provide for student loan repayment for certain nursing faculty, to provide for definitions, to authorize the board to approve applications, to provide for eligibility requirements, to provide for continued eligibility requirements. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the Senate agree to the House substitute as amended to SB 246, please.
All right, that takes precedent over the first motion. So, Secretary, read the caption of the amendment.
Senator Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others offer the following amendment, Amendment 1, to amend Senate Bill 246 by deleting lines 34 and 35 and replacing them with the following. Georgia, an institution subject to subparagraph 10 of paragraph A of Code Section 20-3-250.3, or a unit of the Technical College System of Georgia that offers an authorized IPSE program. That completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 18th. Speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bring for you Senate Bill 246, and some changes were made in the House side. Let me explain, and I'll leave that to the senator from the 3rd to discuss. But the amendment that we are providing really puts this bill back in the form that it was when we sent it over. This bill deals with IPSE grants, which are grants to students in nursing schools in the state of Georgia. The way the bill came back to us from the House is that the grant money was only going to be eligible to students who were at the University System of Georgia in nursing school, but not the other nursing schools in Georgia, such as Mercer, Emory, Brenau, and the other nonprofit schools. And so that's simply what Amendment Number 1 does, that you'll see. And I want to thank my friends, both the Democrats and Republicans, that have signed on to this. Thank the minority leader. You'll see that at lines 34 and 35 make this distinction so that nonprofit, private nursing schools, those students that go there are eligible for the grant, as well as University System of Georgia. And you'll see in the second portion of the amendment, this also clarifies that in the other place in the bill where that needs to be made. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. President. Okay, thank
Actually,
y'all.
you have no questions, Senator. That's right.
I'll yield the well and thank the senator from the 3rd for his working with me and allowing me to provide this friendly amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator has moved that the Senate, I recognize the senator from the 28th. What purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, at the appropriate time, I need to excuse this senator from the 30th.
It is the appropriate time.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 30th
Without
for business
objections.
inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 30th is excused. All right, now the motion is that the Senate move to agree to the House substitute of SB 246 as amended. Is there objection? Without objection, all those in favor of the motion will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passes of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 1, and this motion has prevailed. I recognize the senator from the 32nd.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree as amended to the House substitute to Senate Bill 23.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 23 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend various titles of the official code of Georgia annotated so as to revise the committee name to repeal provisions relative to inactive boards, panels, authorities, centers, commissions, committees, councils, task forces, and other such bodies. The House Committee on Code Revision offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 23. A bill to be entitled an act to amend various titles of the official code of Georgia annotated so as to revise committee names to repeal provisions relating to inactive boards, panels, authorities, centers, commissions, committees, councils, task forces, and other such bodies. Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others offer the following amendment to amend the House substitute to Senate Bill 23 by inserting after code on line 4 the following to amend Part 3 of Article 4 of Chapter 12 of Title 45 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the Georgia Data Analytics Center so as to provide for definitions to establish the Georgia Data Analytics Center as an agent of all executive state agencies. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 32nd. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 23 is a cleanup bill that identified a number of corrections in our code, and you probably remember repeals a bunch of inactive commissions, boards, councils, and committees that are either obsolete or have not been operating. The House made a couple changes. They added back the Palliative Care Council, and they also added Section 4-1 and 4-2 that deals with pre-filing legislation. And then I'll speak to the amendment while I'm here, which is related to the Georgia Data Analytics Center, which is, the purpose of this is to force our state agencies to share their data with the Office of Planning and Budget. This is already an existing area in the budget, and this information that would be shared with the Office of Planning and Budget is already de-identified, aggregated, and follows all state and federal laws. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I yield.
Does any of the senators wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hearing none. The senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute on SB 23 as amended. Without objection, all those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48, the nays are 1, and this measure having received the requisite constitutional amendment is therefore passed. Moving on to SB 222, recognize senator from the 23rd.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute for Senate Bill 222.
If everybody could, we're starting to get loud again, ladies and gentlemen. I hate to keep saying this, but if you got to have conversations, if y'all can slip into the ante rooms, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if those who definitely aren't members of the body, you can slip into the ante rooms. Would definitely appreciate it. So, all right. The senators move. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 222 by Senator Burns of the 23rd and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to primaries and elections generally, so as to provide that all costs and expenses relating to election administration are paid for with lawfully appropriate public funds. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 222, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to elections and primaries generally, so as to provide that all costs and expenses relating to election and administration are paid for with lawfully appropriate public funds. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator to speak to the bill. I've recognized the author. I will call on you in a second, though. Be happy to. For what purpose do you rise, Senator?
Substitute motion. I would like to move that we agree as amended.
That you agree as amended? Okay.
I move that the Senate agree as amended.
All right. Do you have an amendment to offer, Senator? Do they have Secretary, read the amendment.
Senator Parent of the 42nd offers the following amendment, Amendment 2, to amend the House substitute to Senate Bill 222 by inserting after elections on line 13 the following: to provide for a permanent absentee voter list, to provide for procedures regarding such list, to provide for maintenance of such list. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 42nd to speak to the amendment. State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't Senate Bill 222 engrossed? Is it not true that Senate Bill 222 is engrossed?
Let me check on that, Senator. I don't know. Senator. So the senator from the 23rd is correct on Senate Bill 222 being engrossed. So the amendment that the senator from the 42nd offered is out of order. And so, Senator, you can speak to you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is Senate Bill 222. It's the measure that we've debated in the past here. It requires that all funding of primaries and elections in Georgia be provided through lawfully appropriated funds. It would limit and prohibit the use of any external funds for elections in Georgia. That is Section 2. The House did provide a substitute through the Rules Committee. That is in Section 3. That section creates an independence for the State Election Board. So the State Election Board is an independent budget unit that is associated or affiliated with the Secretary of State for administrative purposes, but is not under the control of the Secretary of State. It provides for the ability for the State Election Board to be an independent body and administer its own affairs. With that, Mr. President, I'll yield for questions.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Senator from the 26th.
Senator, yeah, but
Absolutely, my good friend from
I think
Macon.
it needs to be directed to the governor. If it was engrossed in the Senate, then they went to the House and they amended it, and it's back over here. Why you can't amend it?
That's a parliamentary inquiry, I believe.
Well, I'm asking the parliamentary inquiry. I'm just trying to get it straight. If it was engrossed in the Senate, but amended in the House, and now you asking us to agree to the House substitute to the Senate 222, why you cannot amend the House substitute to Senate Bill 222?
Senator, I understand the question. I defer to the President of the Senate.
The answer is, obviously, when it's engrossed in the Senate, it's engrossed even when it comes back from the House, but we can't engross a bill over in the House, as I'm sure you know, having served in the House for so long. But when it starts here and we engross it, and if it comes back, it's still considered engrossed as far as the Senate is concerned.
Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no other questions, I'll yield the well.
I recognize the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. When we passed SB 202 and HB, I think it was HB 316. Yes, HB 316 when we purchased the new voting machines, and SB 202 when we did a thorough rewrite of our elections laws. Both bills created a series of unfunded mandates on local governments in running elections. Local governments, including mine, who are under a lot of pressure, are completely understaffed, seeking workers in a tight labor market. These election workers often face threats, and there's a tight labor market. In addition, local governments, including the one I represent in DeKalb County, our elections board, as I'm assuming is the case for most of your elections boards, have to go to the governing authority, our county commission, to get funding for their elections board. Faced with all of these additional requirements put upon the local elections boards by the state of Georgia, all unfunded mandates, local governments did what I would think Republicans, conservatives would think would be a smart thing. They went out and in the pandemic year, when the election was going to be incredibly difficult to conduct, nonprofits took a look, foundations took a look, and said, we're going to have this grant system that people can take, counties can apply to take advantage of. And red counties did that, and blue counties did that. The shame of this bill is you are raising taxes on all the locals because this body has put all these requirements on the locals. They are all unfunded. And now you're saying we will not let you be enterprising, be innovative, be creative, and try to, that all red counties could apply for too, fill some budgetary gaps. When the General Assembly considers the fiscal impacts of the laws it deliberates, we should be considering the financial impact of both revenues and expenses. And SB 222 seeks to reduce revenues from supplemental funding to local governments, causing the local governments to have to make a net increase in expenditures. The waiving of the fiscal note requirement, the statutory fiscal note requirement for HB 316 and and certainly for SB 202 is currently being litigated because when the statutory requirement to have a fiscal analysis of the increased burden on local elections boards was put before this body, it was raised in the statutory provision that it was out of order to consider the bill without having an understanding of how much it was going to cost local governments. And then meanwhile, we had on our desks reams of paper as to how much more it was going to cost local governments. That was dismissed by the president at that time and overruled, and therefore it is now subject to a lawsuit, which wastes more taxpayer money that could be used to simply provide the ability for our local elections boards in these heavily populated, densely populated counties to be able to run elections with efficiency so that we don't have to wait in line for 4 hours. Let me just tell you that when I wanted to early vote in DeKalb County, this last election, they have, again, enterprising. We have an app where you can look and the website to try to see where you can go of the early voting locations where the line is the shortest. Good, very smart. So I landed at Hartsfield, and I was like, this is the last day of early voting. I'm gonna go do it. And so I looked on the app to see where the line was the shortest, and by the time I got there, the line was already 2 hours long. Maybe some of you don't understand about that because you live in rural counties where you never would maybe wait for 2 hours. I don't know. I'm not trying to dictate what happens in your county. But I would appreciate the same respect for those of us who have to vote in these large urban counties. And if you say you don't really think unnecessary tax increases are a good idea, I would appreciate you not foisting unnecessary tax increases on us. Or at least own it. Say, yes, we do want DeKalb and Fulton and Cobb and Gwinnett to have to raise taxes to run their elections. And we certainly don't think that's going to be necessary in our counties. It just smells bad because it really looks at what you're trying to do is make elections much more difficult to conduct in large, urban, dare I say, Democratic counties. And it's patently obvious, and it's offensive. And if you want to do that, I say provide the funding that we are required to provide under the statute, or own the fact that you intend to make it harder in urban counties and raise taxes in urban counties just so we can go vote. And one of the amendments was a bill that was heard in the House, an excellent bill by a new representative who's an attorney and who has worked extensively on voter protection matters. And that bill said that women who are pregnant or parents with small children in tow or a child with special needs would not have to wait in the DeKalb County 3-hour line because there's inadequate staffing and funding. So that was going to be a great amendment to show that what you really do care about is letting people vote fairly, efficiently, and safely, and not forcing people to wait in line for 4 hours. But what it seems like is you really want to force people to wait in line for 4 hours in the hopes that they'll just leave and not come back in Democratic counties. So if there was any notion in this building about fairness and safety, we would see it reflected in some of the bills we filed. We filed the bill so that pregnant women don't have to wait for 4 hours. We filed the bill so that, the amendment I was going to present, so that individuals who sought to be on the absentee ballot rollover list would be able to do so. We filed the bill that there can be poll workers across county lines. We filed the bill so that on election day, the early vote centers are still open. Because guess what? Everyone gets confused when they try to go vote at the early vote center just to be told, oh, sorry, you actually can't vote here today on election day. You've got to now sit in Atlanta traffic and drive over to your precinct. None of that has anything to do with safety and security. It has to do with making people wait in line and making it as difficult as possible to vote in urban counties. And if there was a good faith effort to engage on this stuff, I would not be standing up here letting you know exactly how I feel about this, but there just isn't. And it is offensive that the minute my county decided, you know what, we're not going to raise taxes on everyone in our county. We've got this nonprofit with a great offer where we have been straining under the unfunded mandates and the lack of resources to conduct our elections for the citizens of DeKalb County, and this foundation wants to help. And now you take that away. It really just strains credulity. So this bill is terrible. And when y'all are ready to engage on actually being straight about running elections, then we can have a conversation about that. But until then, I think I've pretty accurately called out exactly what's going on in this chamber as it relates to voting. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. I recognize the senator from the 37th to speak to the motion.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senate, I'm going to try to bring this back down to earth, and then we can get on this motion. I heard the passion plea by the senator from the 42nd. I appreciate her concern for fiscal accountability and keeping taxes low and all those kinds of things, but this issue is one of basic fairness. I was talking to a group of school kids not long ago, and I raised this issue with them. It was the question that was raised by the senator from the 42nd. I said, I want you to imagine for me, this was a group of kids from an urban setting. I want you to imagine for me these wealthy, outer-lying suburban counties that have the dollars to keep their polls open longer, to have more density of drop boxes and polls, and oh, by the way, there are wealthy billionaires from around the country that sent dollars into these counties to help support in so many ways, to have more access to the polls, shorter lines, all these kind of things. And poor or struggling counties, perhaps struggling urban counties, didn't have the dollars to do that. Is that fair to have this inequity of private dollars pouring into some counties to make it easy to vote and being stuck on only public dollars in other counties? And the kid said, no, that's not fair at all. I said, why is it not fair? I said, those counties over here, these conservative counties with private money pouring in, should never be allowed to do that. It should be fair for everybody. I said, that's exactly right. And that's exactly what we're doing. It's just the circumstance is fair for everybody. What the lady raised was the millions of dollars pouring into certain constituencies, engineered by out-of-state actors who are trying to bring about an electoral outcome in Georgia, shocks the conscience of people across the political spectrum. All Senate Bill 222 does, but what it does very well is make sure that any outside foundation dollars that come to the state are spread evenly across the state, so there's equal access to all people, and that outside entities can't privately fund election outcomes in one place versus another to accomplish their engineered outcome, to try to engineer an outcome for certain communities. Senate Bill 222 does it fairly. Senate 222 is not filled with some of the hypocrisy we've heard referred to here. In fact, I think the shoe may be on the other foot. This is the fair measure. And those that oppose it are simply trying to engineer an outcome by private entities trying to tip the scale from one side to the other. With that, Mr. President, I urge members to support Senate Bill 222.
The senator has yielded the well. Recognize the senator from the 53rd. Senator from the 36th, if you'd like to come speak in the well, you're welcome to, after the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just couldn't believe some of the stuff I've heard from the well on this piece of legislation. Frustrated that we're going to raise taxes, or somebody might have to raise taxes for a free and fair election. Are you suggesting that perhaps private dollars would be better used in an election as it's been done in the past? I think this is a wonderful piece of legislation, and I can't wait to vote green on something today. Thank you, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 222. There's a saying that don't cut your nose to spite your face. There were red counties in 2020 that also participated in outside funding for their election boards, including Cherokee, Paulding, Columbia, and Lowndes County. Any county can apply for outside funding. This is like, why are we removing a tool to help our election board officials run better elections? I don't understand like why we're doing this. Why is this body, again, I mentioned this before, why is this body making it harder to administer elections? I oppose this legislation. I encourage everyone to vote no. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Senator from the 23rd, would you like to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, colleagues, we've been here before. We've had the same discussions, the same debates, the same complaints, the same rhetoric, and the same false information. Okay? Let's make sure we understand. You can get all the third-party funding you choose to through the State Election Board. So anyone who chooses to can make a donation to the state of Georgia, and the state of Georgia can equitably disperse those funds. It's pretty simple. Second of all, let's talk about how long it takes to vote. Well, my good friend from the 37th, from the 42nd, my good friend from the 42nd showed up on a Friday afternoon, the last day of early voting. Well, no wonder the lines are long. How long was the lines on voting day? Anybody want to hazard a guess? 10 minutes. 10 minutes. You have 3 weeks to vote. 3 weeks to vote. And we just passed a bill, Senate Bill 129, that even expands that by letting you take time off during early voting. We're expanding early voting. You know, I get a little concerned sometimes when large metro counties are compared to small rural counties. Now, I want to ask the question, are the votes in DeKalb County more important than the votes in Taliaferro County? Taliaferro County is one of the smallest counties in Georgia. It's primarily a Democratic county, but I protect their right to vote. There's no difference in whether you live in a metro region or a rural region. The vote counts the same. I appreciate the comments from my friend from the 37th, and I really appreciate my comments from my friend from the 53rd, because if the senator from the 53rd can support this measure, the rest of us can join him. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator from the second, you. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The senator moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute SB 222. All those in favor will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the second, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true that in the conference committee report on HB 19, I cannot find any line items that pertain to the state funding elections?
I assume the senator knows of what he speaks. Recognize the senator from 48. For what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary procedure, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is Mark Zuckerberg present anywhere in the building today?
Not that I've seen, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
On the passes of the motion, the yeas are 32 and the nays are 21. This motion, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Senator from 28, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 27th.
Without objection, the senator from the 27th is excused. I recognize the good lady from Albany, Georgia, senator from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House amendment to HB 77.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 77 by Representative Green of the 154th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 15-6-2 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to the number of judges of Superior Court so as to provide for a fourth judge of the Superior Courts of the Daugherty Judicial Circuit. The Committee of the Senate on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass, respectively submitted by Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. The Senate offers the following amendment, Amendment 1, to amend House Bill 77 by striking July 1st, 2023 on line 22 and replacing it with January 1st, 2024. The House offers the following amendment to amend House Bill 77 by replacing lines 22 through 26 with the following. Said additional judge shall be appointed by the governor for a term beginning January 1st, 2024 and continuing through December 31st, 2026 until his or her successor is elected and qualified. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a simple local request from Dougherty County asking for a request for a fourth judge for the Dougherty County Judicial Circuit, and that's pretty much it. Any questions? If not, I will yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator. Would any senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none, and the senator from the 12th has moved that the Senate agree to the House amendment to, the Senate amendment to HB 77. Is it without objection? All those in favor of the motion will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0, and this measure having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Recognize the senator, well, it's supposed to be the 18th. Recognize the senator from the 8th on House Bill 189. Senator from the 8th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate adhere to its substitute to House Bill 189 and that a conference committee be appointed.
The senator has moved that the Senate adhere to its substitute amendment to House Bill 189 and that a conference committee be appointed. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 189 by Representative Meeks of the 178th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 6 of Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to dimensions and weight of vehicles and loads so as to provide for an allowable variance for weight limitations upon a vehicle or load. The Senate offers the following substitute to House Bill 189, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 6 of Title 32 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to dimensions and weight of vehicles and loads so as to provide for an allowable variance for weight limitations upon a vehicle or load hauling certain commodities within a certain range. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection to the senator from the 8th motion? Without objection, the conferees will be senator from the 8th, senator from the 27th, and senator from the 51st on House Bill 189. Recognize senator from the 20th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 240 as amended.
The senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 240. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 240 by Senator Walker III of the 20th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to retirement and pensions so as to revise the minimum and maximum allowable benefit multiplier for current and future retirees, to require certain Social Security coverage for all employees of a political subdivision who are members of the public school employees retirement system. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 240, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to the teachers' retirement system of Georgia so as to provide that certain employees of charter schools who may be eligible for membership in the retirement system as a result of such employment shall continue to be eligible unless the nonprofit governing board of the charter school elects to provide such employees with an alternative retirement plan.
Recognize senator from,
Senator Walker of the 20th offers the following amendment to amend the substitute to Senate Bill 240 by replacing lines 1 through 15 with the following: to amend Chapter 18 of Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to Social Security coverage for employees of the state and its political subdivision so as to require certain Social Security coverage for all employees of a political subdivision who are members of the public school employees retirement system. That completes the order, Mr. President.
recognize senator from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. what you have today is a new version of Senate Bill 240. This body passed the old version out, I think, unanimously. But this version here is different. And what it does is it requires it basically codifies the current practice that's going on with our state retirement plans, and it codifies that to say that the fiduciary of these plans, or the manager of these plans, the sole guiding principle they need to use in their investment decisions is to maximize the return on investment. So that's what this bill does. This was a bill that was introduced originally by the senator from the 16th. It passed out of the Retirement Committee unanimously, Senate Retirement, and passed this body unanimously. We're going to give it another shot. I ask your favorable consideration. Be happy to answer any questions. If not, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. The senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 240 as amended. Without objection, all those in favor of the measure will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 4. This having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Recognize the senator from the 50th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we remove Senate Bill 60 from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 60 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 14 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to secondary metals recyclers so as to provide that it shall be illegal for certain persons to purchase, possess, obtain, or sell, or attempt to purchase, possess, obtain, or sell used detached catalytic converters. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 60, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 14 of Chapter 1 of Title 10 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to secondary metal recyclers so as to provide that it shall be illegal for certain persons to purchase, possess, obtain, or sell, or attempt to purchase, possess, obtain, or sell used detached catalytic converters. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to bring you Senate Bill 60. I ask that we agree with the House. This is a simple bill. It's a very good bill. We passed it last year out of this chamber. We sent it to the House. They did not work quite as hard as we did on sine die, so it failed. But our friends across the hall were able to pass it this year. I'm sure you've all seen in the media the surge in catalytic converter theft across the state, especially in my district. It is a real problem. It's a problem for churches. It's a problem for schools because these thieves are targeting these vulnerable facilities that have buses and vans. Right now, law enforcement do not have the tools to prosecute or charge these people that steal catalytic converters because when you are caught with one, it's not a crime. So this will level the playing field because law enforcement officers right now don't have the tools. This will give them the tools. In the words of former Senator Jeff Mullis, this is a good bill. Every senator has a red and green button, and I'm asking you to vote green today. Thank you.
You do have a question, Senator. Senator from the 26th.
Senator, you?
Yes, I do.
What happens to those folks who buy cars, body shops, they buy cars, redo them, fix them up, what have you. Sometimes the parts are not interchangeable, but they take off the catalytic converters and then they sell them. Mm-hmm. Will that affect those folks who are in business?
No, it will not affect those folks because they have a license to sell those. And if you are legal, if you have the title to a vehicle that the catalytic converter was taken off of, or if you have a purpose, then you're good to go.
Recognize the senator from the 30th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does Senator yield?
I do.
Does there need to be a physical note with this?
A physical?
Yes.
Fiscal, no. There will not need to be a fiscal note with this.
Okay. And since you mentioned former Senator Mullis earlier.
Yes.
Is there moral turpitude listed anywhere in this bill?
There is no moral turpitude in this bill. Thank you for that question. And Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. The senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute for Senate Bill 60. Without objection, all those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 20th, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 19th.
Without objection, the senator from the 19th is excused. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48 and the nays are 1. This measure, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I recognize the senator from the 29th.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate disagree with the House's amendments to Senate Bill 63.
Senator has moved. Stand by, Senator. We got to track that measure down. We thought it was going to sail through the House. That's why we didn't even have it ready. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 63 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to bonds and reckonances, so as to provide for setting of bonds and schedule of bails. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 63, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to bonds and reconnaissances, so as to provide for setting of bonds and schedule of bails, to provide for release of individuals on bail for misdemeanors, to limit unsecured judicial releases. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator has moved that the Senate disagree to the House substitute for Senate Bill 63. Is there objection? Without objection, your motion carries. Recognize the senator from the 18th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to SB 272.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 272 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to courts as amended so as to supplement the duties of administrative judges, to reestablish the Criminal Case Data Exchange Board, to repeal Code Section 15-6-50.3 relating to Criminal Case Data Exchange Board created. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 272, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to courts so as to supplement the duties of administrative judges, to reestablish the Criminal Case Data Exchange Board, to provide for definitions, to provide for issuance of uniform standards by the Judicial Council of Georgia, to provide for acceptance by the Council of Superior Court Judges of Georgia of uniform standards promulgated by the Criminal Case Data Exchange Board. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 18th. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is Senate Bill 272, which we passed out unanimously, and the House substitute simply cleans up some language. This relates to the Criminal Case Data Exchange Board that we voted on last year that everybody was fine with, and we changed the structure of it so that it will now be under the AOC rather than the clerks. That's the bill that I explained to you guys. They actually, the House made a few changes which are good. And number one, it says that we need to determine whether or not there's enough data to track human trafficking offenses, to make sure that that's incorporated into the data that will be accumulated. And it also cleaned up some language in Section 7 of the bill that was non-substantive. Be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge your consideration.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. The motion from the senator from the 18th was the senator agree to the House substitute to SB 272. Without objection, all those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. This measure, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize the senator from the 23rd for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 249 be elevated from the table.
Senator has moved that 249 be taken from the table. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 249 by Representative Martin of the 49th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Subpart 2A of Part 3 of Article 7 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the needs-based financial aid program so as to provide for a definition. The Committee of the Senate on Higher Education recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectively submitted by Senator Hickman of the 4th District Chairman. Senate Committee on Higher Education offers the following substitute to House Bill 249, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 4 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to industry services training programs so as to provide for certain tuition-free programs that relate to the operation of a commercial motor vehicle for veterans. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a bill that really makes sense. I want to first thank my good friend, the senator from the 31st, on ensuring that our veterans have an opportunity to complete CDL training tuition-free. That's the first part. The second part of the bill deals with needs-based financial aid. It allows for what we refer to as completion grants. It cleans up a little language to make sure that our students are making progress so that at 70% of their completion of their four-year degree, they're eligible for completion grant, or at 45% of two-year programs. It also increases the tuition grant, the grant for completion, the completion grants from $2,500 to $3,500, best $1,000 we could ever invest in the state of Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield for questions, or I yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator. Recognize the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I want to thank a few people real quick. I want to thank the chairman of Senate Higher Education, the senator from the 4th, the senator from the 23rd. Thank you for being collaborative. I also want to thank the chairman of Higher Education in the House for doing something, for all of us doing something monumental. I know this body voted on this a few weeks ago in terms of free tuition for those trying to get a CDL licensed, a discharged veteran that's trying to make a better living for himself, herself, their family. When we need truck drivers and we need to support the trucking industry, and we also need to support our veterans. So this is a pretty big deal here in Georgia, and I want to thank this body and the leaders that made it happen, including the president of the Senate, you and your staff for your support. With that, Mr. President, I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Recognize the senator from the 32nd.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to remove House Bill 453 from the table.
Senator has asked that House Bill 453 be removed from the table. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 453 by Representative Hilton of the 48th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to health so as to repeal a requirement that every ambulance service pay an annual license fee, to repeal a requirement that ambulance service annual license fees be deposited in the Indigent Care Trust Fund. The Committee of the Senate on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by sub. Senate Committee on Health and Human Services offers the following substitute to House Bill 453, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to health so as to repeal a requirement that every ambulance service pay an annual license fee, to repeal a requirement that ambulance service license fees be deposited into the Indigent Care Trust Fund. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 32nd.
There we go. Oh, you have it. Oh. I'll go back.
Senator, I'm sorry. I was over here holding babies over here. So, is there objection for taking it off the table? Without objection, Senator, now you can speak. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 453 reveals to EMS, and for 20 years, almost all ambulance services, public, private, and otherwise, in Georgia have paid a license fee that goes to the Indigent Care Trust Fund. And the original intention for this program was to work as a provider fee program similar to hospitals and nursing homes, where ambulance services would provide matching funds in return for additional reimbursement. That never happened. As a result, ambulance services have paid this fee every year with no return. This bill eliminates the fee and will help ambulance services in every county, public and private, and hospital services, and will help our EMS all around the state with the workforce challenges that they're having now. As you know, rural EMS services in particular are struggling with staffing issues, and we're seeing a limit in services in some areas. The effective date of this bill is January 1st of 2024, which is half of the next fiscal year, and money has been allocated for this in the budget. Unless there are questions, I'm happy to yield the will. No questions? Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 14th. Yes. You on?
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise today in opposition to the bill. Happy to yield for any questions, Mr. President.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yield the will.
Your objection is duly noted, though. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 41, the nays are 10. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. I recognize the senator from the 11th. Senator from the 1st.
The other Watson. Yes, sir. I ask for unanimous consent to bring House Bill 302 from the table.
Senators ask that House Bill 302 be taken off the table. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 302 by Representative Franklin of the 160th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 16-5-94 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to restraining orders and protective orders so as to provide for the issuance of a temporary or permanent protective order by the court. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Taking it from the table. Hearing none, I recognize the senator from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's not the first or the last time that I'm sure that Senator from the 11th and the Senator from the 1st will not be confused. But this has to do with a stalking, restraining, protective order. All it does is allows the judge to issue a 6-month or a 3-year temporary or permanent basis protective order. And that's all it does relating to stalking alone. Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions. If not, I'll ask for your favorable consideration and yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 31st. What purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 8th.
From the 8th. Without objection, the senator from the 8th is excused. Would any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize the senator from the 21st.
Yeah, Mr. President, ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 20th for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 20th is excused. I recognize the senator from the 31st.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to lift House Bill 340 from the table.
Senator has asked that House Bill 340 be removed from the table. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 340 by Representative Corbett of the 174th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Subpart 2 of Part 6 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to conditions of employment in elementary and secondary education so as to provide for daily duty-free planning periods for teachers in grades 6 through 12. The Committee of the Senate on Education and Youth recommends that this bill do pass, respectively submitted by Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. Senator Dolezal of the 27th offers the following Amendment 1 to amend House Bill 340 by deleting Subpart 2 of Part 6 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of from lines 1 and 8 by inserting to provide for appeals and arbitration after definition on line 4. Senator Dixon of the 45th and others offered the following amendment to amend House Bill 340 by renumbering sections 1 and 2 as sections 2 and 3 respectively, and by replacing lines 1 through 3 with the following to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to elementary and secondary education so as to prohibit the discussion of certain personnel matters. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Without objection, I recognize the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've got a couple of things here. I'm going to be very brief and kind of go through. House Bill 340, the underlying bill, is a bill that will help securing teacher planning time and improve school safety awareness. It protects planning periods much like the duty-free lunch period, does not change the length of time for planning periods, and continues to give the school the authority to use the length of each school planning period. It encourages teachers to engage in students and renew the school security plan. And also this bill will protect the planning time for all educators across the state, which will also help them with implementing the new literary curriculums recently passed. Briefly, I'll just say I support the amendment from the senator from the 27th, which is cleanup language per the request of the governor. And Amendment 2, which is my amendment, I'll speak to it, which is basically language that is protecting teachers. This is probably the most pro-teacher amendment you will vote for, just to ensure that we don't have bad actors messing with teachers in our schools with their contracts and performance. And I want to be very clear before I leave this well to the citizens in Paulding County, Georgia. You know, there's been much to say about the amendment and the origination of this Senate bill. And my wife's a teacher, and I want every teacher in Paulding County, Georgia to know that I support our teachers. I will always have our back, their backs, no matter what goes on before elected officials. And for any elected official to try and, you know, bully me from the Paulding County School Board or to use members of the House to do it, I will not stand by it. I will not be threatened, and I will not be pushed around. So just to be very clear so that our teachers know that we will always support them. And, you know, I take it personally because you're going to mess with a teacher, you're messing with my wife. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator from the 42nd, would you? Senator from the 42nd, would you like to be recognized? The senator has yielded. Recognize the senator from the 27th to speak to his amendment.
I don't know if the senator from the 42nd had a question about the amendment or not, so I mainly came up here to see if she did. This fixes something in Senate Bill 204 that we passed week before last. The governor's office contacted me over the weekend, and we're changing changing mediation to arbitration to allow the appeals process that we described in the bill. They will fix that in the order of signing the bills. So that was the purpose for my amendment. Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions on that if that's what the question was about, and if not, I yield the will. Good.
You have no questions, Senator. You got your amendment here, Senator. I was saying. Recognize the senator from the 31st. You've already spoken to your amendment, right? Okay. Recognize the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to ask the fine gentleman from the 31st a couple questions, but I didn't have the opportunity, so thought I would just come up here really quickly. I recall this bill, I believe, which is the subject of, I believe, Amendment 2. I remember it in Education and Youth Committee. I believe it was SB 98. I believe it did not actually come onto the rules consideration calendar, and if it ever did, it did not come out of this body, so it is not a bill that has been passed by this body, and it has therefore not been debated. And the reason I'm raising that is I have right here a letter that I just had a couple questions about from the superintendent of the Paulding County school system that raises a number of allegations surrounding this particular situation that apparently is the underlying situation related to SB 98. I have no opinion on that. It has obviously not been discussed by this body, and it is clearly something central to the senator from the 31st district. Just wanted to point out that this bill did not actually advance in this chamber, has not been debated, and we have letters here from the superintendent and locals related to this particular incident that was SB 98, now Amendment 2. So I just have a lot of questions about whether it's wise for the body to move forward, and certainly respect the senator from the 31st's opinion on that. Thank you. I'll yield for any questions. And if not, I yield the well.
You have no questions,
Thank
Senator.
you. Yield the well.
Senators yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hearing none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hearing none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on amendment number 1. Is there objection to amendment number 1? Without objection, amendment number 1 is adopted. Now on to amendment number 2, authored by the senator from the 31st. Is there objection to amendment 2? Objection to amendment 2 from the senator from the 42nd. All those in favor of the amendment will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 32, the nays are 17, and the amendment is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passes of the bill, the yeas are 49 and the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. If I get everybody's attention real quick, please. If I can have everybody's attention. I just want to recognize a couple of special people here today. They're my emotional support staff back here. Y'all know how sensitive I am. My wife, Jan, and my sister, Natalie Jones, are here today. So, they can be my muscle, too, if I need them to. So, but. All right, moving on. Recognize the senator from the 32nd.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to remove House Bill 309 from the table.
Senator has moved that House Bill 309 be taken from the table. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 309 by Representative Cooper of the 45th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to regulation of hospitals and related institutions, so as to revise provisions relating to financial stability requirements for applicants and licensees of personal care homes and assisted living communities. The Committee of the Senate on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass, respectively submitted by Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize, without objection, recognize the senator from the 32nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 309 is a department bill from the Department of Community Health that seeks cleanup language related to the ability of an applicant for licensure of an assisted living community or personal care home to demonstrate financial viability. This bill will allow the department to modify the financial stability affidavit that applicants submit to address issues identified by CPAs in conflict with their professional standards. If there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48 and the nays are 2. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize the senator from the 52nd.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to lift House Bill 31 from the table.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 31 by Representative Buckner of the 137th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 3 of Chapter 8 of Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to hazardous site response so as to dedicate the proceeds of certain hazardous waste fees to the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund as authorized and subject to the conditions imposed by Article 3, Section 4, Paragraph 6 of the Constitution of Georgia to provide for compliance with constitutional amendments, to provide for an effective date and an automatic repeal. The Committee of the Senate on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Huffstetler of the 53rd District. That completes 52nd District. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 7th, what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, I ask to excuse the senator from the 6th. Mr. President.
Without objection, the senator from the 6th is excused. Senator from the 52nd, you made it down to the well. All right. The well's yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. November 4th of 2020, we passed a constitutional amendment that I had been the Senate sponsor of that dedicated the fees to where they were intended to. For many years, there had been fees used for other purposes, driver's ed, scrap tires, things like that. The great appropriations chairman from Statesboro had concerns. He had been here through the misery years, which I got to miss, fortunately, and wanted some limitations on it, some triggers. One of the limitations we put on it was that it could not be more than 1% of the state budget. So many fees were put in there, but the hazardous waste fees were not put in there because there was concern we might go over the 1% limit. Since then, we've consistently shown that we're below that. We're at about 0.79. These would only bring it up to about 0.82 or 0.83, well under the limit. So this would put the intent of the voters on that constitutional amendment in place for these fees, that they would be dedicated to their purpose. If there's no questions, I'll yield the well.
You do have one question, Senator. Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I'll yield.
Senator, isn't it true that I strongly support this bill? Senator Representative over in the House, Buckner, has worked under Heartland U.
I think you've supported this for many years as our dean, and I think the voters appreciate your support of it.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You have no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill. Remind you, this bill requires 2/3 vote because it designates funds to a particular entity. So all those in favor vote yea. All those opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49 and the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize the senator from the 25th. Senator from the 25th. House Bill 317, Senator. It's hard being the best dressed man in the room. Everybody wants to talk to you.
Do move that we exhume House Bill 317 from the table.
Spoken like a true undertaker. Senator has asked that we lift up HB 317. Secretary reads his caption.
House Bill 317 by Representative Taylor of the 173rd and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 19 of Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to the State Employees Assurance Department, so as to provide for the assignment of certain group term life insurance benefits to pay for funeral services of a deceased individual who was a member of the Employees Retirement System of Georgia, Georgia Legislative Retirement System, or Georgia Judicial Retirement System. The Committee of the Senate on Retirement recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted by Senator Hartman of the 16th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Without objection, I recognize the senator from the 25th, my senator from Milledgeville, Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I am so proud to be your senator. I have looked forward to this all my life. This is a very simple bill. All it does was provides that insurance companies, the ones that are not covered, can just do an assignment to pay the funeral bill. And with that, if there's no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
I like it.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Senator, you're undefeated in here, aren't you? Recognize the senator from the 28th. What purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true that the people of the 25th are finally happy to have somebody that can pass a bill around here?
You know, I know the folks from Milledgeville are happy, so. All right. We're going to do a couple of special actions right now. I recognize the senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to House Bill 230.
The senator has moved that the Senate agree to House amendment to the Senate substitute on HB 230. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 230 by Representative Newton of the 127th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to sales and use taxes so as to provide for a qualified consolidated government special purpose local option sales tax. The Committee of the Senate on Finance recommends that this bill do pass by substitute, respectfully submitted by Senator Hufstetler, the 52nd District Chairman.
Recognize
The Senate offers the following substitute to House Bill 230, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to sales and use taxes so as to provide for a qualified consolidated government special purpose local option sales tax. The House offers the following amendment to amend the Senate substitute to House Bill 230 by deleting lesser of $250 million or the in line 73. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. Colleagues, we addressed this bill, House Bill 230, a couple days ago, Monday. We made a clarification to ensure that the amount of the bond that is being issued is $250 million for the principal amount of the project. Once that amount is collected via special purpose local option sales tax, it will sunset. Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator. Senator has moved that we agree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to HB 230. Without objection, all those in favor will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, yeas are 44, the nays are 8. And this measure, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I want to get everybody's attention real quick because we got a very special guest here with us today, one of our former colleagues, somebody I actually came into this body with. We came in as freshmen together. Dr. Dean Burke is here with us today. Give it Dr. Dean Burke. Come on up here, man. Come on up here. Say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. Secretary, it's good to see you. Most of you in the room, good to see you. I want to thank the senator for the 32nd for getting my department bill, our department through this body. I know it was a tough effort for her, but she plowed through. She did a 30-second presentation, so she did learn something. I was her mentor, so I feel like I taught her something. I want to thank the governor and Commissioner Noggle for allowing me to continue to serve the state of Georgia as the Chief Medical Officer of the Medicaid Division. As all of you know, my heart has been in improving health outcomes in Georgia. And as much as I complained as we dealt with all the problems that we have to face in the Medicaid program, it was kind of a put up or shut up moment when they asked me to join them. And I feel like that with y'all's help, we can do a lot of good work over the next couple of years, modernizing the Medicaid system. And as some people said, why would you want to grow a broken program? Let's fix it so that we're proud of it and make it one of the best programs in the country. And I appreciate y'all's help in doing that with me, along with me. I had a great 10 years here. All of you are really good friends, and I appreciate the support that you'll continue to give me as we move forward. So y'all have a great sine die, and I probably will not be here with you. Thank you.
So good to have Dr. Burke back. Even though we miss him in this body, he was a fine choice that Governor Kemp picked to head up that role in the state agency. So I hated to lose him, but I know we got a good, solid, competent person over in that department, which is a good thing. So appreciate him being here today. Okay, we're going to take on one more special action, and then we're going to have the budget right after that. So everybody, I want to prepare everybody to get in the room so they can hear the budget and be ready to listen to the budget. And that's really all we have to do is finish the budget. And I'm open to whatever y'all want to do after that. So we'll do this final action. I'll recognize the senator from the 50 for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we agree to the House version of Senate Bill 44.
The senator has moved that the Senate agree to House Substitute SB 44. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 44 by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to crimes and offenses so as to provide for mandatory minimum penalties for violations of the Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 44, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 5-7-1 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to orders, decisions, or judgments appealable and defendant's right to cross-appeal so as to provide for the state's right to appeal the court's deviation from mandatory minimum sentencing regarding certain offenses, to amend Title 16 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Without objection, I recognize the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today and bring you Senate Bill 44. This is a bill that we have passed through this body already. It received a lot of debate. This is a bill that I'm bringing on behalf of Governor Kemp. I want to thank the governor for his efforts in fighting gangs throughout the state of Georgia, giving prosecutors the tools they need to be more effective. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for his support of this bill and the Attorney General as well. There's no room for street gangs in Georgia. This bill is going to help prosecutors across the state. It's going to help children, and it's going to really provide serious penalties for someone that tries to recruit a child into a life of crime by asking them to join a street gang. Along with the effort to crack down on crime, the governor also seeks to add two straightforward practical changes to Georgia's unsecured judicial release statute by codifying what should be regular practice amongst our judges today. First, it provides that a judge may not issue an unsecured judicial release on the basis of his or her own recognizance, basically a signature bond, if the accused person has been previously convicted of bail jumping or has otherwise failed to appear in court in the last 5 years. So that's a change that was made over in the House. Second, this bill makes clear that prior to issuing an unsecured judicial release, a judge must consider the accused criminal history. So before a judge allows somebody to get out of jail on their own recognizance, he has to at least look at their previous criminal history. Mr. President, this is like I said before, this bill has already received extensive debate in this chamber, and for those reasons, I will respectfully ask for your favorable consideration, and I will yield the well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator has yielded the well. I recognize the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The governor's bill is a bad bill. And the reason it's bad, let's put aside the discussion we had on SB 44 when it was first in this chamber, right? Because, you know, we all remember that discussion about gang activity and recruiting minors. You know, we made an argument as a minority party that sex trafficking victims should be excluded from prosecution under this bill, which I think was such an obvious bipartisan move that multiple members of the majority came with us on that proposed amendment. But here we are. We're back with the original version of this bill, but plus more provisions now relating to cash bail. But these cash bail provisions are not limited to gang activity. This is across the board a change in cash bail. Now, our colleagues in the House, maybe not, you know, minority party in the House is not maybe the most credible source of information to appeal to in this chamber, but they said the name Nathan Deal a lot, just like I have said the name Nathan Deal a lot, and I've tried to say it as many times as I can from this well, because, again, for the umpteenth time, there's a trajectory towards progressive or common sense bipartisan bail reform. And that trend that Governor Nathan Deal took us on, we are no longer on. We are now in the opposite direction, moving to crack down on pretrial release. I went actually personally to a pretrial justice conference a few months ago where stakeholders from throughout the state, prosecutors, defense attorneys, nonprofit employees, folks who think about this problem came together to talk about what we can do on cash bail. And one of the things, or pretrial release in general, one of the things that they remarked is that we've got rules on cash bail that don't match up with the data, and one of the reasons we don't have the data. We make a lot of decisions on pretrial release in here that are not based on data in jails and across the state practices to determine what actually promotes public safety the most. So you now are in a situation where if you look at lines 159 through 170 of this bill, or 169, actually it's 170, if somebody misses court because they simply forgot, and there was a bench warrant issued for their arrest, which, by the way, is a very common practice. If you've ever been to municipal court, somebody's not there during the roll call, a lot of judges will just say bench warrant, bench warrant, bench warrant. If somebody gets one bench warrant once, and not even necessarily arrested, not even necessarily convicted, then that starts a 5-year clock where they can never be released on their own recognizance for any charge within the next 5 years. Now, it does exclude non-serious traffic offenses. But there are lots of offenses, trespass, criminal damage to property, where there might be a misunderstanding. Again, it's just a charge. In this country, you're innocent until you're convicted. But if you happen to miss court, then you start a 5-year clock where you have to use cash bail for literally any charge that person could possibly have. I want you to think about that. You have lots of jurisdictions that don't have text message reminders, don't have clear reliable mailing practices to remind people when court is. It may be that when you're pulled over, the citation you get is the only information you get about when you got to go to court. And what if you lose that paper, right? Or maybe you have to go into work on an emergency and you think, I'll lose my job if I don't go into work today. I know that technically I've got a court date, but hopefully I can figure something out. I've got to go into work or else I'll lose my job. So then all of a sudden, if that bench warrant is issued, now mandatory cash bail. I mean, really think about that. By the way, this bill excludes non-serious traffic offenses on the bench warrant aspect of it, but it doesn't exclude non-serious traffic offenses on the flip side of it during that 5-year clock. So let's say you miss court for some reason, and there are plenty of human reasons to miss court. I mean, again, it's easy to stand up in this well and demonize people who miss court, but there are plenty, I guarantee you, of basic human reasons why people miss court. And again, going back to my little flag in the sand, if we had administrative solutions like sending text message reminders in every jurisdiction to get people to come to court, people want to comply 99% of the time. But anyway, so let's say you miss court. Now all of a sudden you get charged with improper lane change or speeding or your taillight's out. Now all of a sudden the judge does not have discretion for 5 years to let you go on your own recognizance. They have to put a cash dollar value on your bail. And what have we discussed in here before when it comes to $1 bonds, $5 bonds? Sure, you'll see them occasionally. But the whole point of the bill before you and bills that have preceded it is to make it more difficult for judges who are elected officials to issue bond decisions that look lenient. So even if the judge is looking at a pathetic case in front of them, somebody who, really is on the line with their work, their employment situation, really struggles to find transportation, to get to court, to get to their job, that judge no longer has the discretion to show mercy, to show compassion. And if that judge is worried about the optics, they might say $500 bond, $1,000 bond. They don't want to issue a $1 bond or a $5 bond. So again, this is the type of thing where we trust judges with discretion. Why? Because they see the human elements face to face. They know firsthand what the human being in front of them is going through way better than anybody sitting in this room. So to take it away categorically, a judge's discretion to be not lenient but humane in situations where people are missing court once or twice, that's not good policy. And it's not what the state of Georgia should be doing. Coming up here when the result is baked on a governor's bill doesn't feel great. But I'm not going to miss an opportunity to try to remind everybody in here that these decisions are going to have long-lasting consequences that make it harder for people to live their everyday lives and stay in compliance with a criminal legal system that in here we are not calibrating right now to be responsive to what human beings really need. Anyway, 33 to 23. Mr. President, I'll yield for questions.
You do have some questions, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 37th for a question.
This gentleman, you.
I do.
I'm just trying to ask some clarifying questions here because this is, there are a lot of things we talk about. The details really matter in this place, but I want to make sure, these details that you described seem like they can really, really matter to people. So I want to make sure I'm clear because I don't want to act in either way on this without being fully understanding. So what you're saying is describe the circumstance that you talked about, failure to appear, you get your one shot, but then on the backside, minor traffic offenses are not considered. Walk through a fact pattern or what you mean so we can understand what exactly you're talking about.
Okay, thank you actually for that opportunity. Imagine this scenario. Here's a real case that I dealt with when I was in law school clinic up in Connecticut. They do things a lot differently up there, but human beings are pretty similar. So this was a real case that happened when I was in law school. There was a handful of friends who got invited over to a friend's house. The property owner didn't like, this is like an apartment complex, property owner didn't like that the residents were inviting too many people over at one time. So they had a standing no trespass order on that apartment complex that basically invited police to come take away anybody the property owner didn't really want to be there. Now again, if you live somewhere, you have a valid right to invite guests to your house or your apartment. That's just part of living. And so, what basically happened is a few friends come over, they're chilling, they're not doing anything wrong. Property owner sees that there's a gathering, gets police on scene. The person who lives in the apartment explains to the police officer, you need to understand, these are just my friends, I'm having them over, right? Police officer says, well, too bad, there's a standing no trespass order. It's not trespass, but they issued the no trespass order. Those are charges, right? Trespass charges. That's not a non-serious traffic offense, right? So it's a trespass charge. So imagine a scenario like that. A police officer hands you a paper citation, which is a second, like a copy of the citation they keep, and you lose that paper citation, or you have work, or one of these scenarios that I'm trying to evoke in terms of why a person would miss court.
So if you legitimately miss court, you're wrong, but you miss court. Did it happen once?
Yeah, the charge is a charge. Maybe you're innocent, but you miss court on the first charge. And it's one of these jurisdictions. Let's say it's a rural Georgia jurisdiction that only has court once every, 3 weeks or whatever. And it's kind of just a calendar call. If y'all have ever sat in court, you know how this goes. The judge just moves through cases really fast. If somebody's not there, bench warrant. They're not here, bench warrant, right? So under line 166, no bench warrant has been issued for arrest. Doesn't say that they were arrested, doesn't say they're convicted. Warrants just issued on person's failure to appear in court within the last 5 years, right? And the non-serious traffic offense language doesn't apply because we're talking about trespass, all right? Now, all of a sudden, that person for the next 5 years is locked in. If they get pulled over for a broken taillight, the judge is forced to issue a cash bail bond decision.
So what you're saying then is, if that condition, if you miss court, and you're wrong, you're saying for 5 years after that, if you're pulled over for a traffic citation,
Any traffic citation.
you're getting arrested, getting booked, and going to jail for that, and then you have to make post bail?
Unless you post bond, sir. And the reason is because unsecured judicial release is the only remaining way in this state that you can get released without cash bail on your own recognizance. So in that scenario, let's say the judge is in a circuit where they have to appear tough on crime, which is many judges, and they don't want to issue a $1 bond. I mean, we hear a lot in this building, well, maybe they can just issue a $1 bond. But as I've said from this well before, the then chairman, no longer chairman of anything in the House Judiciary Committee, said that's the point. The point is that we force them to purport a dollar value so that judges will increase the number, that they're not really going to issue a $1 bond in many cases.
Right.
So let's say that for that traffic stop, you get a $1,000 bond. Now you're in the territory of what we like to talk about in Minority Party, which is criminalizing poverty and putting somebody in a circumstance where we just wreck their life a little bit. We make it a lot harder for them to comply and do things we want them to do. They miss their job, or miss work. They lose their job. They miss a family obligation. They're not in compliance with family or child support obligations, all that. I mean, you compound all those problems when you put somebody in that trap.
So, gentlemen, further yield.
I do.
So, we may disagree on some provisions of cash bond. I certainly believe most folks have to post bond for what most folks would think about crimes. We may disagree on that, but I do want to make sure we have clarity. So, because I think the bipartisan whole of this body wants to understand the effect of what we're doing. So, if someone has a failure to appear in court, they're wrong for, admittedly. You're saying, I want to make sure we're clear, that if you're pulled over for a traffic offense, you're going to the house. You can't deal with that at roadside and move on with your business.
Anything, because every traffic offense in this state is a misdemeanor. So if you have a busted taillight that you're trying to get fixed the next day and the officer decides that they're going to issue a citation, cash bail. No unsecured judicial release.
So whereas we may disagree on cash bail and other offenses, and I know that we do, I just want to make sure there's not unintended consequences about folks that think they're going to get released on the side of the road for a speeding ticket, they're going to get put in a cop car and taken away, and their evening changes dramatically.
And that's a really good point. And I wasn't doing a good enough job of putting a finer point on this, and I'm thankful to the Senator for the 37th. When a police officer issues you a citation and lets you go, that is a form of being on your own recognizance. And the risk here is that if cash bail is mandatory just for a charge, again, you're not convicted yet. You still could be innocent legally. You still are innocent legally. Police officer may be forced under a bill like this to put you in the car, take you to jail until you can post whatever the bond is that the judge sets.
One final question. So does the gentleman contemplated an amendment, hypothetically, that would say if the subsequent offense in the 5 years was a standard traffic offense, you could still be released on your own recognizance there, but otherwise could not be released? Because I do think there are members in this body that draw a huge distinction from driving 12 miles an hour over the speed limit or 16 miles an hour over the speed limit from shoplifting. I have no issue with someone getting booked and going to jail for shoplifting, although you may disagree. But I do see speeding as something different. I want to make sure there's a way forward.
Senator, sadly and tragically, I agree with you on this, but the procedural posture of the bill makes us unable to make an amendment at this point. We could have maybe moved to agree as amended and change this, but I'm not going to. I play some games because we're all politicians. I wasn't going to play a game today and do an agree as amended just to make that point and take it out, because ultimately I'm not going to vote for the underlying bill. So it would be in bad faith for me to make that motion knowing that I was going to vote no. But here we are on the debate on the actual motion before us, not subject to amendment, and candidly, we might be stuck. You vote for the governor's bill today. I think you create those sorts of unintended consequences, and what I really wish is that the governor's office had drawn the line at the gang provisions of this and not tried to put in this cash bail stuff at the last minute, Senator.
Senator from the 2nd.
Senator, do you yield?
I do.
Senator, does this bill reference the number of typographical errors that happen when citations are entered into a system and a summons and a notice to appear may be sent out and the address could be incorrect, and so the intended party didn't even get the notice. And so is it not further true that while you're driving, you get pulled over and they say you have a failure to appear for a traffic offense for a summons that you never received because somebody had a typographical error in putting your address on the summons? Is that not true?
Senator makes an excellent point. You know, the Beatles said you get by with a little help from your friends, and I'm thankful to the senators for raising points I didn't address in my main speech. If this provision here just says a bench warrant has to be issued based on failure to appear. It does not have an exception for an unlawfully or mistakenly issued bench warrant. So to the senator's exact point, if there is a defect in the notice that you receive to go to court, for whatever reason, typographical error, mistake of address, that sort of thing, then if the warrant is issued in your name for the failure to appear, you are stuck under this bill. It does not matter that it was unfairly issued. That 5-year clock starts to run.
Further question, Senator.
Yes.
What is the remedy in the judicial system for someone who has received bad notice or a bad summons to appear before court because of a typographical error? How would one correct such a remedy in our judicial system? How would one fix that?
Under this bill, there is no remedy, Senator.
Further question.
Okay.
So if an individual were to be held in another county because I drive up I-16 and let's say I get stopped in one of the counties on I-16 and I had a ticket and I forgot about it and they mailed it to the wrong address, would I be held in the Twiggs County Jail potentially for a missed notice in another county because I got pulled over there and they saw that I was missing, had a bench warrant?
Senator, to your point, and it's what I've already said, if the warrant is issued in your name for a failure to appear, it does not matter if there are any circumstances that lead to that by mistake, this bill is then triggered. And there is a 5-year period in which you are unable to get on recognizance release.
And final question, Senator. Is there any way for the average citizen to go and check to see if they have a warrant anywhere? I mean, how do you find out? I mean, I'm sure many members of this body don't even know that if they may or may not have a warrant somewhere. How do we know?
I'm a member of this body and an attorney, and I cannot tell you off the top of my head if there is some comprehensive way in every jurisdiction to find out if you've got a bench warrant for your arrest, when exactly your court date is. I think it varies by jurisdiction. But the point here is, y'all, look, we come up here and we argue against your bills and we say, hey, this is a bad one, vote against it. This is a mistake. I mean, this should not be in this bill. And your leg to stand on in terms of passing the governor's bill with the gang stuff would be so much stronger if the House had not added this bond language. It's a really tough position to be in. I get it. But I'm asking my colleagues sincerely, please do not let this happen today.
Got one more question, Senator, if you'll
Sure.
take it. Recognize the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I do.
You said 33-23. Do you think that might be changed to 31-25?
I'm simply a humble man, Senator, and I would not take for granted any of my colleagues' votes. I was just making the rhetorical point that when it's a governor's bill, typically you get a partisan split, but I think that there is some interest in the body today just looking at people's faces that this issue is a tough one, Senator.
You have no further
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. President.
Senators yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Senator from the 50th, you can close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I'm going to ask you to vote in favor of this bill to address the concerns of the senator from the 14th. This was not a last-minute bill. This bill has been vetted. This bill has been worked, and if you do not show up for court and you have a bench warrant, let's say you had work, and then you go back to court and you tell them, hey, I didn't show up, then the warrant will be recalled. And once the warrant's recalled, the 5-year clock no longer applies. That's what it says in the bill. It says that this subparagraph shall not apply if such warrant was recalled. Second, for mistaken identity bench warrants, if a person objects to their criminal history, then the burden then shifts to the prosecutor to prove that the criminal history is accurate. So the two concerns brought up by the senator from the 14th, while I respect you, they have been addressed. We have thought about those two concerns, and I ask your favorable consideration of this bill. Thank you very much.
The senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Hearing none. The senator has moved to agree to the Senate bill. And those in favor of his motion will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. How many, Senator?
Mr. President, I had a parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
I've got 53 seconds to ask it. I'm not clear what we're voting on. I'm not clear the effect of this bill, and I was just trying to ask the gentleman to say it's been addressed. If someone's got a bench warrant, I don't mind them going to jail. But if someone does not have a bench warrant, but they've simply had failure to appear in 5 years, and they go to jail for getting to speak, I have an issue with that, Mr. President. And I don't know parliamentary how we address that.
Senator, I understand it, but at the end of the day, the vote's already started, so it's down to a red or green decision. On the passage of the measure, the yeas are 30 and the nays are 20, and this, having the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I recognize the Appropriations Chair for the 19th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate agree to the Conference Committee report to House Bill 19.
Secretary, read the caption.
Committee of Conference on House Bill 19 recommends that both the House of Representatives and the Senate recede from their positions and that the attached Committee of Conference substitute to House Bill 19 be adopted. Respectfully submitted by the Honorable Blake Tillery, Senator 19th District, Senator Kennedy of the 18th District, Senator Gooch of the 51st District. Conference Committee substitute to House Bill 19, a bill to be entitled an act to make and provide appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 19th. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. Thank you. Appreciate that. I was going to ask whose grave he got those off of, but I think some people out in the halls may already be predicting that. Might be mine. Mr. President, I bring to this body the Conference Committee report to House Bill 19, the state's FY24 general appropriations budget. It's $32.4 billion. It funds every agency from this body, the legislature, to veterans at the end, and the services that we provide for our veterans. The big highlights you already are aware of. We were able to maintain the Senate's position on quite a few things. The 500 now comp waivers are reflected in this budget. Money, oh yeah, listen, that's fine with me, go for it. Money concerning dyslexia is in this budget. I do want to point out it has a trim. Remember that the effective date for that is FY25. So there was a trim of about $1 million to try to balance out funds. Hope is at 100%. The Hope numbers, the way we were able to fund Hope public and private at 100% was by using updated numbers of students. Our USG population has been declining, as you know. So that helped us save with a little bit of savings there, and by updating those numbers, we think we can make both of those fit in the program in lottery funds. Shout out also to our commissioner at Lottery, who has done a tremendous job over the past 3 years of outperforming revenues, and we know they'll do that again. Hoteling, a major focus of this body. Monies in this budget address hoteling. Substantial funding at DHS to begin to continue preparing for pandemic unwinding. The task that we have placed on DHS, though, that's been placed on all states to unwind after the pandemic, though, is daunting. I am so appreciative of that staff, of Commissioner Brose. Even with these increased funds, just the man hours to do it are going to be so difficult, and we want to make sure she has all the support from from our body that she can, but the task is not going to be easy even with funding. Sometimes there's things dollars just can't do. We also took and put into this budget a policy concerning our child caring institutions. Because of changes at the federal level, what's called federal 4E funding is not available to many of our group homes that held foster children in the past. We need them to make a conversion so they'll still be eligible for those federal funds. We provided roughly $18 million for them to get, or $15 million now, I think, had to culminate in the conference committee to get ready for that. And we hope we can incentivize and move those bodies quickly so that we can continue their federal funding. Officer pay, most state officers receive a $6,000 pay raise. Many others receive a $4,000 raise. At Regents and University System of Georgia, there was a cut, as you know, when it left this body of roughly $80 million to the teaching formula and 18-ish million or so to insurance. The insurance money was restored. The reduction at teaching is now $66 million, with a direction that they focus on their carry forward funds to help cover that cost. Also point out, remember that enrollment's been declining. There's probably other ways that businesses would use to handle that as well. Someone asked for a report of carry forward funds. It's $504 million in October of 22 when we got the last report. We get a report roughly every October. At DBHDD, $117 million towards initiatives concerning mental health and developmental disabilities. The Senate, the conference committee's final version has $47 additional million on top of the additions that were made for the governor. This body has focused on funding concerning mental health, and I believe that $117 million addition for this year shows our commitment. Buildings. Get ready for the list. We have funded buildings at Fort Valley State University, University of North Georgia at Cumming, FF&E, Georgia State University, Kennesaw State University, Columbus State University, Dalton State, O'Kelly Library, the Cedartown Library, the Georgia Military College, Denmark Library, the University of North Georgia main campus, the Banks County Library, Georgia Southern University, land at Piedmont Technical College, East Georgia College, Georgia Southwestern, and the University of Georgia. It's a lot of buildings. Design at Albany Tech, at Augusta Tech, at Atlanta Tech, at Georgia College and State University, the University of West Georgia, Albany State, the College of Coastal Georgia, and then a quick start facility for Rivian, most likely in Morgan County, Georgia. I told you this earlier that we may have to have a longer discussion about buildings moving forward. The planning dollars, I cannot promise you that we're going to be able to fund the buildings for next year with the planning dollars we have now. It's going to be a longer discussion we expect to have with the governor's office and with the House as we move forward after this budget hopefully passes. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 24 buildings or planning and design for such building. And the bonds that would cover that in the next year would be substantial. Other highlights are going to reflect the highlights you saw for the FY24 budget previously that I brought to you. I think these are the high points that many of you are already aware of, and many of you have come to me and asked me questions at my desk before we got here today. Mr. President, thank you so much for your leadership on this budget. I appreciate your trust in me, your trust in our staff. Thank you for being so very involved from the get-go as we discussed, particularly issues concerning mental health and hope, and your commitment that this body would stay at 100% for the Hope Scholarship. I know our staff's listening. I want to tell them thank you again. I want to say thank you to Chairman Hatchett for his work and to OPB Director Farr and his team for the work they've put in. I hope this is a budget that you can feel reflects matters in your district and things that your constituents have brought to you. Mr. President, with that, I will yield for questions, or if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You do have some questions, Senator. Recognize the senator from the second.
Does the distinguished appropriations chair yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, I've got just a few questions. Being a freshman senator, I'm intrigued by what you said about the carry forward balance from the university system of Georgia. And I'm always ever concerned about the agencies that have, $500 million, like the lottery, USG. Can you talk and explain potentially how they have so much money and how did they get it? Because I thought all dollars had to be appropriated by this body, and so I'm just trying to figure out how did they get a surplus of $504 million.
Yeah. Well, the Carry Forward Fund report, which I brought up here, thinking I might have to bring it up here and talk about it before, it has been emailed out to each one of you. It is sitting in your inbox right now. So if you want to look at that report, you can. You'll see that the second page lays out each university. Page 5 lays out the balances and how they got there. Some of them charge tuition, some of them charge technology fees, some charge indirect recovery costs, department sales and services, and they're allowed to keep those funds. We passed a bill that you remember the former senator from the 37th opposed greatly, Senator Tippins. I think we can say his name if he's no longer a senator, who said, hey, we need to really focus in on this and where this funding's going. And those funds total right now about $504 million.
Further question, Senator.
Yes, sir.
With the carry forward funds, does that money stay with the university system or is it at the institution? Can you explain that to me? Because when I look at Article 8, Section 4, dealing with the Board of Regents and the university system, could you explain that a little bit too as well?
Thank you. It's at each university. If you get the carry forward report, you'll see how much is at your university at each one. And I know Savannah State is obviously on your lapel pin. That's one that would matter to you. It's going to be at page 86. You can see how much they have in carry forward funds. Some schools have more than others. And if you look at carry forward funds in October of 2022 for Savannah State, it's going to be roughly, and I'm going to add them up across the bottom, 2.4 plus 720. It's going to be roughly 3.4. That 500, we'll leave it at 3.6. They're going to have almost $4 million, if I'm doing quick math, in carry forward funds there. Now, they're going to have plans for using them, but they have, I'd say, roughly $4 million at Savannah State. Article 1, Section 8 that you asked about specifically. Article 1, Section 8 is extremely clear, and I'm glad you brought that up. There's a lot of comments about that this will be disproportionately impactful to smaller schools. That does not have to be the case. You see, what you brought up, Article 8, says that when we give money to the Board of Regents, the Board of Regents are in charge of how that will be done. It's essentially a block grant. So while you do see budgetary items and titles, teaching, Skidaway Island, other things under the Regents budget, those things are program areas, but we block grant it to USG. They can spend it honestly any way they want. If they come outside of a program area, they will get a ding from the auditor. They'll send them a nasty letter and say you're supposed to be in this program area. But overall, they are constitutionally allowed to spend that money when it comes to them as they please. Go ahead.
Final question, Senator.
Yes, sir.
So with what you're saying from Article 8 is that if the distinguished senator of appropriations were to want to support Savannah State University and many of our other HBCUs in the state of Georgia, we would just essentially be giving a block grant of money to the university system of Georgia, and they may or may not spend that money as we intended. Is that kind of what you're explaining to me, Senator?
That's one way of saying it. I think you're saying it in the reverse that I was saying it, but both would be true. that now in the past USG we've separated out those program areas and they've stayed in those program areas. But if USG, specifically in the teaching program, which is where the 66 million reduction is, if they wanted to say, we're not going to apply this evenly across all schools, or we're not going to apply it by the teaching formula, or we're not going to apply it by square footage, we're going to look at how much you have in carry forward funds and apply it commiserately to that, they absolutely can do that within the teaching area, and they won't even get an audit report on that. But we can't tell them to do that. That's their constitutional ability.
Recognize the senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the Honorable Appropriations Chair yield?
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the support of the timber industry that you and your staff and the House staff have done in creating this budget. But look, I'm just a simple guy from Middle Georgia. And when I look at the universities, I think about education. Yeah. So could you help me understand exactly how much money in this budget do we budget for the teaching in the classrooms, the education that we pay to send our kids to university in the state of Georgia?
So you're asking about university teaching specifically? That would be
Yes,
about
sir.
That would be about $2.8 billion for teaching. It's just teaching. Just the teaching formula is $2.8 billion. So the reduction there of 60, it's actually, if you want to get to specifics, it's $2.868 billion. So the reduction that we're making is in the third decimals over there. If you want to talk about USG as a whole, though, it's going to be around $3.1 billion.
Thank you, Senator.
That's right. Just to follow up on that, if you want to look at total funds, not state funds, it's going to be $9 billion. About $2.2 billion from tuition.
Recognize the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
I share some of the subject matter interests of my colleagues. From like a comparative perspective, I'm curious, in contrast to the Board of Regents, how much state funding goes to our technical schools?
Good question. It's actually about $500,000. I think it's $500,000 exactly this year. So that would be, if you're using state funds to state funds, so $3 billion state funds to USG versus $500 million, $500 million to TCSG, it will be roughly 1/6. If you want to go further than that, though, you'd look at total funds. That's going to be roughly $1 billion at TCSG to $9 billion of USG. So it would be a 1 to 9.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective, Senator.
Yeah, no problem. This is actually the questions we ask in the back rooms. I never thought I'd get asked up here. Let's keep going.
Recognize the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Could you kind of help me and go into some detail about the other things that we fund at Regents?
Sure. We fund ag extension. We fund libraries. We fund vet labs in Athens and Tifton. We fund the Skidaway Island Ocean Research Facility at USG. We fund forestry extension. We fund teaching. I think I already said Skidaway Island. I can keep going. There's a lot of things.
Recognize the senator from the 21st.
And those are in addition to teaching.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman Yield?
Yes, sir.
Chairman, thank you for all your hard work, you, the conferees, and your whole staff. Just one question. Does the Board of Regents get HOPE money too?
Yes, actually. So then if you turn in your budget in student finance and you were to go to Hope Public, that's going to be about $885 million. So on top of the $3 billion in state general funds, the Hope Public, almost all of that's going to come to Regents. It's going to go to the individual schools based on tuition. But yes, sir, that's an additional $885 million. Yeah.
Recognize the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that Regents is the only department that can retain its funds from tuitions and fees?
Yes, with a codicil. Let me give you the codicil. So they are allowed by state legislation that we passed, and the former senator from the 37th vehemently opposed until the end. I think they may have made a deal there at the end. They get to keep their carry forward funds by statute. Other agencies are going to have to ask OPB for permission to keep that. Authorities keep their carry forward funds like Georgia World Congress Center, et cetera. Those keep those, just Student Finance Authority. They keep that. But yes, sir, the Regents is different. It's not an authority, and it does get to keep that $504 million. Yes, sir.
Recognize the senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, my friend. Are there any restrictions on the Board of Regents as regard to spending?
As long as it's legal, no. And I'd point you back to Article 8. When the monies come to them, they can allocate them. If they wanted to give every single dollar to South Georgia College, they could. If they wanted to give every dollar to USG, they could. They obviously won't. But they have the ability, those members who are appointed by each congressional district and the chancellor and the USG central office have the ability to allocate the funding that comes to the teaching program specifically, but the regents as a whole, however they desire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 30th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does Chairman yield?
Yes, sir.
So I'm trying to follow you here. I haven't heard anything about foundations here. Yeah, I know that there are some of the schools. Are they at all the schools under the regents?
That's a great question. I don't know. I know some have multiple foundations, but I don't know that every school necessarily has a foundation. I don't know that number. I know some have multiple.
Okay, that's the only thing. Foundations would be the only way the additional way that the schools would be getting revenue into.
That's an additional point. So they would be able to raise. I know a lot of schools raise foundation funds, and they also use foundations sometimes to do real estate purchases, et cetera.
A real estate, like a sub-entity under a foundation?
Or a sub-entity under the university, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah. We don't, I can't tell you how much is in those funds. I'm not aware of any report of that. Not that I know of.
Recognize the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, will you yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that regents subunits may own more property than the actual regents themselves?
You must have been talking with the senator from the 30th. I have heard that, but I do not know it. But you're correct that I would not have a way to know it. I do not know of a report that I have. I may have a report, but I'm not aware of any report that tells us about the subunits and the foundations and what they own. It could exist. If it does, I apologize. I do not know about it.
So there's potentially not a report that tracks public property going back to some of these institutions, potentially.
So now we're going to a great discussion that we have in budget. We actually have had a discussion and a question raised for us as to whether or not we have liability for those properties that are owned by foundations. That might be what you're getting at. I don't know. That has been raised for us because we don't know about it. We don't know, but would the end user be a university and thus the state of Georgia, since it is owned by a subunit of a university? I think that's a very good legal question that we would need to know the answer to.
Senator, you yield for one more question.
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that yours truly used to chair, maybe not in the university system, but a foundation in TCSG and once owned property through the merging of several colleges? Is it not true that we've seen foundations historically get out of the property business because of potential liabilities?
The senator may know of what he speaks. I've never served on one of those foundations, but thank you for the knowledge you bring to the chamber.
Recognize the senator from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the chairman yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can the Board of Regents enter into contracts without the purview or permission of the legislative body?
Yes, they can. Article 8 specifically allows that. I think that was part of the discussion that's been in this chamber. The only avenue of involvement we have is the budget.
Recognize the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Related to the senator from the 11th question, there's been talk about a MOU between Wellstar and Augusta University. Would that come before the legislature because it's state property, like other state property deals?
It would not. It would never come here. The only purview we would have, or the only involvement we would have, would be the budget.
Recognize the senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The senator yield?
Yes, sir.
I've heard that there are over 25 employees of USG that make over $750,000 a year. Is that true?
So you would be going back to an audit report from 2020 or 2021. It's at open.georgia.gov. You can look up how much each one of us makes. Some of my constituents do it and laugh at our was $17,000 salary, now $22,000 salary. But if you ran that report, they're probably talking about them running that report in 2021, and in 2021 it would have showed over 20. I don't know if it's over 25 people at USG that make over $750,000. Now, they're going to be, some are going to be doctors at AUHS. Some are going to be, Kirby Smart would be one of them. And then he's going to be paid by state funds and then foundation funds. Senator from the 30th talked about. I think his state funds at the time was like $779,000. But there were others as well that aren't AUHS or Kirby Smart.
Senator, for the yield?
Yes, sir.
So those salaries, those are taxpayer funds, right?
Probably. Some could be, at least with Kirby Smart, he's getting foundation dollars on top of that. I don't know if those are all state dollars or not. But there is a state dollar mix.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir. I guess that kind of goes, the thing, institutions and I guess USG set their own compensation policies, so we don't have any purview into that.
Recognize the senator from the 47th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Said would the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
One of the things I just got to ask when we start talking about Coach Smart, don't you think that's a great investment for the state of Georgia to keep winning that national championship every year? Go Dogs! I'm not hearing a Go Dogs back. I know you went to school over there. Said
Twice.
But one of the
I
things
love the university.
that several years ago we exempted the university themselves from falling in as quote lobbyists. But don't most of these universities have somebody that's a professional that's representing their interests? Because for me, when I'm listening to this discussion, I'm hearing time after time after time how much money we're putting into this, and I think it's working. I think those folks that don't most of these universities have an actual government liaison that's working for us?
Senator, did you just ask me, do most universities have a lobbyist? Is that what you just asked me?
Well, in so many terms. We don't call them lobbyists.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Said just remember that investment over in Athens, it's worthwhile.
Yes, sir.
Recognize the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman Yield.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, when it comes to these carry forward funds, is there any sort of oversight or accountability as to what happens when that money is spent by these schools?
None to my knowledge. And again, the former senator from the 37th spent a lot of time beating that point. I think this chamber did too. We do get that report we got it in October of this year that shows how they spent the previous year. It lays out how they intend to spend the next year. Besides that report, we do not have any say in that setting. No, we don't, if that's what you're asking. And do we audit them the next year to make sure they spend it the way they said the year before? It would be just reading the year reports and seeing and comparing the reports.
Recognize the senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the chairman yield?
Yes, sir.
First of all, we really appreciate the job you're doing for the Senate. You make us proud. This carryover fund, you and I were both county commissioners, and we had fund balances, which I kind of see this as the same thing as a carry forward fund. And some years we added to it, some years we took away. What percentage of this fund would they have to use to fully fund what they're requesting for here, the additional $66 million?
So you can do quick math, $66 million. They have 504 in carry forward funds as of October. I don't know if that number's up with spring tuition or down. It could be lower, it could be higher, but if you just use the October figure, and remember the October figure for this year was 504, the previous year it was 550, so 66 million, whatever percentage that is of 504, is that going to be around 11-ish, 12%?
12, 13%, it sounds like to me then, yes, sir.
Put me on the spot doing numbers, thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Does this cut to funding disproportionately affect smaller schools, and can we avoid that?
Senator from the 49th, I think you've hit on the point that many of the members here, I think, are driving home with their questions, which is, it does not have to. And that question is left up to USG and the Board of Regents. If they want to apply it across the board, I'm sure schools that are smaller with less carry forward funds are going to be impacted more. But if they want to apply it differently, they are not only allowed to, they are constitutionally empowered to.
Recognize the senator from the 13th.
Chairman, you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I echo sentiments of everybody. Thank you and your team and Appropriations Committee for the work you've done. Mighty impressive. Question for you.
Yeah.
Make me understand this. So the decision about how teaching reductions will be made, are you saying it rests slowly with the Board of Regents?
Yes, it rests solely with the Board of Regents. Yes.
Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
First, I want to thank you for your help with the Augusta Judicial Circuit issue, and hopefully next year we can get that pushed through. But thank you for everything you did there. My question goes back to block grants, because I'm actually still wondering how that process works. Is there an ability for the regions to actually get block grants from the legislature, and how does that work there?
Yeah, I think, again, we're still talking about that Article 8 issue. The funding that comes from the legislature pursuant to Article 8 is, by Article 8's reading, a block grant. Now, if they do spend those items within different program areas of our budget that's laid out with the big, thick black lines, they will get a nasty letter from the auditor. But in the line we're talking about, the teaching line with the $66 million reduction, there's what did I say it was, 2.8-ish billion? And out of 3.1. So the percentage here I think we're talking about is, again, much less than other agencies have seen.
Recognize the senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman Yield.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for all you do. Great job of putting all the paperwork together and everything. As I listen to what you've said and listen to and what I can read, the Board of Regents would get roughly over $3 billion plus another $885 million from Hope. Is that a correct number?
That's a fair way to look at it. It's $3 billion in state funds, which when they run through other federal funds and tuitions, et cetera, ends up being about $9 billion. And that $9 billion would include the Hope funds, Hope Public, which is $885 billion. Yes, sir.
So almost $4 billion.
Yes, sir.
Close. Thank you.
And I hope that folks, when they talk about, well, our state spending over the years has declined, they will look at that Hope number too. Those are, I would say, state spending.
Recognize the senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
Yes, sir. To the distinguished rules chairman.
So we've been throwing some numbers around today, and I just, if you will, I want to make sure I understand this. So the Board of Regents is getting $3 billion in the budget.
Yes.
And they're getting $885 million from Hope. Is that
That'd
correct?
be the public Hope number. Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you'll further yield, so they're also able to do this carry forward funds of what, about $500+ million?
Yes, sir.
Is that accurate? Okay, so they get all that, and then they get tuition on top of all that?
Yes, $2 billion-ish, $2.2 billion in tuition. I do think that, though, that tuition number and the Hope Public number can be squeezed together. Those might be kind of overlaying, so I want to be fair to them there. But you've laid that out. Besides the 885 sort of being in the tuition, the 885 Hope Public being in tuition, the rest of that is accurate.
Well, thank you, Senator. That's a lot of money.
Recognize the senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does Chairman yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to make sure I've got all the numbers together, too. I think you mentioned that on top of $3 billion that we've spent in state funds and $885 million more in Hope funds and $504 million more in carry forward funds, aren't we also funding several buildings for the university system as well?
Yes, sir.
Could you help elaborate, tell me what that looks like?
Yeah, let me go back to that first sheet I laid down. I'm going to do rough numbers because I didn't write these down. I apologize and thank you. Georgia State's roughly $50 million. Kennesaw State's roughly $50 million. Columbus State, Dalton State, University of North Georgia's main campus, Georgia Southern, East Georgia College, Georgia Southwestern, UGA, College of Coastal Georgia, Albany State, University of West Georgia, Georgia College and State University. All of those, at least that's just this year.
Senator, final question. If I added that numbers together, that seems like it's maybe north of $4.5 billion. Is that not about right?
taking the Public Hope, USG. I haven't done those numbers yet, but that sounds like it could be fair.
Recognize Senator from the 46.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the chairman yield?
Yes, sir. If
I
you
guess
don't mind, this is going to be the last
somebody's
one.
gonna have to take up for the University of Georgia here and the university system. I've been hearing from my people back home, and I'm still an advocate that, I mean, y'all better not be messing with Kirby Smart's money here. I heard you mention him, but I think our university system provides about the best educational opportunities in the country. And
yes, sir.
With Hope, I know we're the envy of everybody. I want to make sure we're not unnecessarily harming our entire university system here. I keep hearing all these numbers. Of course, I was crunching them all afternoon when this is on our desk. It's somewhere north of 60 million they're claiming are cuts, but y'all keep saying we got $3 billion in the teaching budget. You got 800 and something million in Hope. You got this 500 million they got in reserves. What kind of percentage are we cutting from them? I hadn't added all. There's one line in here that says there's $9 billion in education. I think that has federal funds too.
I'm going to do quick math for you.
What are we cutting from our this treasure we have in our state?
$3,885,000. The 504 carry forward. $66 million reduction of all those. Mr. Chairman, I have that being at 1.5%.
Okay. Does the House agree with these cuts?
This is a conference committee report, Mr. Chairman, so yes, sir. It is by both chambers.
All right. Well, we thank you for your efforts.
Mr. President, if there are no more questions, and maybe even if there are, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. Senator's yielded the well, and we need to thank our appropriations chair for a fantastic job that he did throughout this whole process. I think he and the appropriations chair for the House worked very well together, and I think they did a good job of bringing this budget home now. So I appreciate the Senator from the 19th's hard work, and I also appreciate his staff. They've been working a lot of long hours the last couple of weeks, and they deserve a lot of credit as well. So thank you very much, Senator. Thank you for your continued work on this, and we appreciate all your hard work. You'd make the Senator Hill very proud, I can tell you that. So, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the motion? Chair hears none. Senator from the 19th has already closed the debate. The question is on the adoption of the conference committee report on HB 19. All those in favor of adopting the conference committee report will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Almost perfect again. I tell you what, my good friend from the mountains up there. On the passage of the motion, the yeas are 54, the nays are 1. The motion has prevailed, and the Senate has adopted the conference committee report on HB 19. Congratulations, Senator. Senator from the 14th, what purpose do you rise?
Well, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion.
All right, what's your motion, Senator?
Well, seeing that the Senate has accomplished its one constitutional duty for the session, I move, Mr. President, that this Senate stand adjourned, sine die.
Your motion is in order, Senator. Senator from the 19th, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry?
Bingo.
Stand at ease. I'm going to talk to our leadership team real quick. Senate come back to order. If the Senate could come back to order. The senator from the 14th has made a motion to adjourn, and as he, or sine die, and as he pointed out, we have completed our only constitutional obligation here tonight. So this is a debatable motion, and recognize the senator from the 14th. Speak to it.
Distinguished members of the Senate, there comes a time in the life and the working schedule of every chamber when it's simply time to go home. And further to that, if you're a member of the minority in this chamber and you watch with FOMO, every time a member of the majority gets to make a special motion or agree to this or disagree to that, you think, when do I get to play? When is it finally my turn? When you look at a bingo card prepared by the Twitterati and you see that there is a blank that is yet to be scratched off, it is in these moments, colleagues, when young and enterprising senators must stand forward and do before 5:30 p.m. what few members are willing to do, and that is to move that this body adjourn sine die, and that's why I did it, and I'm not sorry I did it. Mr. President, I'm happy to yield to questions on this special motion.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well, and I urge your favorable consideration.
I recognize the pro tem, Senator from the 18th. Speak to the measure.
Well, thank you, I guess, Mr. President. I'm not sure. So I find myself perplexed. We don't usually get this kind of motion, but he is a freshman, the senator from the 14th. And sometimes he speaks as if he knows of which he's saying. And sometimes he speaks as if he understands what he's saying, even when we don't understand what he's saying. But I think there are merits to this motion. We have done the one constitutional duty of this body. And I think we need to give serious consideration to the motion. But then I'm really conflicted because that would require me to agree with the senator from the 14th. And that causes me great angst. But the one thing that we would really, the burning question on everyone's mind of every distinguished member of this body is, how would the senator from the 53rd vote? How would he vote? And the possibility of gaining the answer to that question almost is delicious enough to make me want to support this motion and ask that we have it voted on. But with that, I know we have other distinguished members and leadership that may want to speak to that.
We do.
So as others have said, you know, sometimes my friends are for it and sometimes they're against it, but I'm always for my friends. So that would be my answer to you, Senator from the 14th, whatever that means. And I suspect that's about as understandable as some of the things you have said from this well during this session. Thank you. I do yield the well.
All right. All right. Madam Leader, would you like to speak? Is the motion brought forward by your caucus?
Yes, it was. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate, and all our special guests. This is how we conduct business in the state of Georgia. We pass the budget. We have done that. Senator from the 19th, you did a great job. Thank you so much for honoring our request. But now it's time to go home. All in favor? Mr. President, putting all jokes aside, we really appreciate our families coming down here and standing around the wall until midnight. My daughter is here and her good friend that she works with, her colleague, my great-grandson is paging today. I hope you all met him. But as far as going home, I think we ought to stay here and do the people's work. Senator from the 35th encouraged me and said she really want to work. So, Mr. President, I think I'll yield the well, and maybe we could have dinner first before we finish. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield.
I was getting excited there, Senator. I mean, we were about to have less bills and a balanced budget. I thought we were about to have a conversion here. Senator from the 14th, you have something else you'd like to add?
Well, Mr. President, I have an open mind. And And I can be persuaded if the debate so calls me to change my mind. And I've also learned an important lesson this session, Mr. President, that's to follow my leader. And if my leader wants to stay and work, then I will respectfully ask to withdraw my motion.
All
Mr.
right.
President.
Yeah, he's asked to withdraw his motion. All right. All right. Recognize the majority leader.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that we haven't passed a gambling bill this session, but I was about to call his bluff on this vote?
We might be getting ready for something there, Senator. You never know. I'm just kidding. So I wouldn't bet on it, though. But all right. Well, since he's withdrawn the motion, I guess we'll just keep working here a little bit. We're going to take up 2 actions, and then we're going to break for dinner. So 2 special actions. I'm going to recognize the senator from the 29th on SB 63.
Mr. President, I move that we adhere to the Senate position on Senate Bill 63 and appoint a conference committee.
The senator has moved SB 63. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 63 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to bonds and reconnaissances so as to provide for setting of bonds and schedule of bails. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 63, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to bonds and reconnaissances so as to provide for setting of bonds and schedule of bails, to provide for release of individuals on bail for misdemeanors, to limit unsecured judicial releases. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator has moved that the Senate insists on its position. Is there objection? Without objection, we'll put forward a conference committee. Senator from the 29th, senator from the 18th, and senator from the 51st will be on that conference committee. Theirs. Go get them. Recognize senator from the 20th, good man from Perry, Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate disagree to the House amendment to Senate substitute to House Bill 557.
Senator has moved that the Senate disagree to the House's position on HB 357. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 557 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to physicians, assistants, and others, so as to authorize physicians to delegate the authority to advance practice registered nurses and physician assistants to prescribe Schedule II controlled substances. That completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator from the 20th has moved that we insist on our position or disagree with our position, with the House's position on HB 557. Is there objection? Without objection, we'll live to fight another day, Senator. All right, the pro tem has brought in some food for the members here. We're going to stand at ease, take a little dinner break here, and let's just say we'll reconvene about 6:45. I've asked the pro tem, is pro tem here or the majority leader, that somebody's asking where do the senators need to go? I need somebody to make an announcement right there. Where do the senators need to go for the dinner? Secretary of the Senate's office is where they'll be serving dinner. So we appreciate the pro tem providing that, and let's stand at ease until about 6:45.